Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Draconum Blade. And yesterday I mentioned that I would be opening a new kettle of worms today as opposed to all the timeline questions we've been dealing with, and so indeed I am. Draconum Blade's question is this: will I be taking part in the project of many witches to do a binding on President Donald Trump later today, February 24th of 2017? And this certainly is a loaded question, and my answer to it, I think, is probably not going to be what anybody expects because I specialize in that kind of answer. But before I give my answer, there are a couple of ground rules that we need to discuss. The first is that any political point of view that I express in this vlog or anywhere else is a personal point of view as Donald Lewis. As the Chancellor of the Correllian tradition, I take no political positions, nor does the tradition itself, in terms of parties or candidates. In terms of issues, we very much do, but in terms of parties and candidates, we do not. And although I believe that the rules of the American government that prohibit religious leaders from endorsing particular candidates or parties are being changed, our policies on this matter are not going to change because Correllians are all across the board. And even at the Correllian Council of Elders, the American members of the Council of Elders, who are just over half of the council, were pretty much evenly split in the recent election, as was the country itself, and as I assume are the US-based members of the tradition. Therefore, the tradition itself certainly is not going to take a position regarding parties or candidates. We will, however, continue to strongly support the rights of people of all backgrounds, particularly in terms of gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, etc. And I have had it suggested that that constitutes taking a position regarding party, but I do not agree. And I would say that these are issues and not particularly party related, although certainly certain parties do tend to take certain positions, but our position relates to the issue and not to the individuals. But having said that, once again, as I go forward, any opinions I may express are personal opinions and should be taken in that light. Now, a little background on this question. Since the election, there has been an awful lot of division in the US, and many people in the pagan community have attempted on several occasions to have some sort of magical working against President Trump and his administration because they believe that the administration is attacking the rights of minorities, particularly racial and gender minorities as well as religious minorities. And being a religious minority, of course, pagans are concerned about this. Now, one of these is set to happen on February 24th, which is today, and hence Draconum Blade's question. And my answer, am I taking part in this? No, I am not. Do I approve of this? Not particularly. Do I think it's a good idea? No, I do not think it's a good idea. And why do I not think it's a good idea? Well, that will be the gist of the vlog. I think first I want to address the issue I've seen some people bring up that this violates the Wiccan Rede. Well, first, not everyone in the community is Wiccan, although as Correllians we are, at least under the definition we use. And we do endorse the idea of the Wiccan Rede, do as you will but harm none, but we're also very specific in what we mean by harm. And it's often been phrased as unprovoked or egregious damage. I really wouldn't regard this as falling under that definition. I think that when people's lives are endangered, and people in certain minorities do feel very much endangered by this administration, and I think they're right to feel that way, it's perfectly appropriate to use the tools you have to defend yourself. And I would regard this as being nothing more or less than that. I just think it's stupid. Why do I think it's stupid? Because it's being fired in the wrong direction. The problem with this whole idea is that it shows one of my favorite talking points, a lack of critical thinking skills. I think it would be far more sensible and far more practical to work for the outcomes we would like to see, to work for the protection of individual liberties, for example, to work for the safety of certain minority groups, to work for enlightenment in our government, etc. To work, in other words, in a positive direction rather than in a negative direction, in the sense of working for an actual action rather than trying to prevent someone else's action. I think this would be much more productive just in the first place by going forth in the direction we want to go. Binding Trump, even if it worked, does not move us in a good direction. It stops us from going in a bad one. It's better to move in the good direction you want to go in than simply to stop things where they stand. Moreover, I think the target is wrong. If you're upset about the directions this administration is going, I really don't think Trump is the place to look. I think that historically Trump is not an ideologue, but an adventurer who has managed to put himself into a very prominent position in a movement which he neither started nor shaped, and advancing policies that are not inherently his own. Binding Trump himself has nothing to do with stopping those policies because he didn't start them, and they're not really his. The movement of which he has become a face is much older and was shaped by very different people who will not be affected by this. More importantly, although certainly the president has a lot of power, the Congress has more, and most of the damage that people perceive as being done is being done there, not in the White House, although certainly the White House is taking the attention. And I think that one of the things people are misunderstanding, they're falling into a trap, which is looking at the individual rather than looking at what's going on. President Trump takes a lot of attention. He has always taken a lot of attention. And he directs that attention where he wants it to go. He is an entertainer and he's a very intelligent man. Is he an ass? Well, yes, apparently he is an ass, based on what I hear from people who are mutual friends. But is he a fool? Absolutely not. You do not become president of any country if you are a fool. It doesn't work that way. And if you're laboring under the impression that a fool can be elected to that level of office, you probably should just turn off this vlog now, because these things just don't work that way. Rather, this is a very intelligent man who is very adept at focusing attention in the places he wants it, which is not necessarily the place you should be looking. And what I would say is that you need to look beyond the surfaces, look beyond the media, look beyond the show and the apparent bull in the china shop, and look at what's actually happening, particularly in the Congress. And there are a lot of attacks going on against the rights of minorities. And it is very important to see this. But binding President Trump isn't going to stop it or even affect it. I've seen people use the phrase binding President Trump and anyone who abets him. That's not going to make any difference either, because it's not coming from him. It is a much older movement. And I have talked many times about the Christian Dominionist movement, which is what this is. Look at what they're doing, look at their very plainly stated goals, and tell me it's not what it is. It is the Christian Dominionist movement. I and members of my family have been warning the pagan community about this for 20-odd years. And for the most part, no one has cared to listen. Well, now we're here. They're in a very powerful position, and they're doing what they said they were going to do. And if we are taken in any way by surprise, it's only because we were fools. And if you were taken by surprise by this, you really need to open your eyes and look at the world around you a little more, because there's nothing surprising except the fact they actually won the election a little earlier than one might have thought they would do. But they've been working toward these goals for generations now. 2 generations to be precise. It has its origin in the late 60s. We've talked about it at great detail. It's never been a secret. They've been very open about their goals and their policies, and now they're enacting them. And is this a bad thing for the pagan community? Well, maybe, maybe not. The extent to which it's not is only the fact we're not on their radar, because they basically looked at us and dismissed us as a bunch of idiots. Therefore, they're not moving against us very quickly, because they see no reason to. There are many other minorities much higher in their sights than ourselves, but that really should not be a comforting revelation. And certainly they will get around to us if they remain in power. So why then do I not favor things that work against them? Well, again, I don't think this is working against them. I think this is wasting one's energy. It's like signing an online petition. People love online petitions, but what is an online petition? For the most part, it's an act of masturbation. Makes you feel good at the moment, but it doesn't really accomplish anything. It is a waste of time. There are certain specific occasions when it's not. If the entity you're sending the petition to has asked for petitions, well, then they may actually see them. If it's attached to an important media campaign which is going to make hay out of the numbers, well, that might be another matter. Then it serves a purpose. But for the most part, internet petitions don't get to the people they're meant for, aren't looked at by those people if they do get to them, and carry no weight with them because they know how very easy it is to click that button, and it doesn't represent any kind of actual action. If you want to have an effect in something where you might sign a petition, online it's much better to pick up your phone and call the congressman or the senator or the company or whoever, because they actually pay attention to that because it takes physical effort. And only people who actually care about what they're doing are going to take that effort, but anyone can press a button. And internet petitions are basically a waste of time. So is this idea of binding President Trump. It's not addressing the real issues, it's not addressing the real people, and it also is not in any way advancing a positive outcome. It's merely attempting to stop things where they stand, which isn't going to help anything. So basically, using our critical thinking skills, I think that if we wish to protect our religious freedoms, to advance the rights of our community and the rights of other minority communities, to protect the rights we already have, that is exactly what we should do. Not try to stop things where they stand, not try to bind things from going forward, but rather push them forward in a different direction. I just don't think it's a practical idea. I think it's silly. I think that anyone who's doing it is wasting their time and should take that energy and put it in a different direction. The worst part of it is that people who do this are going to feel like they did something when they really didn't, because they did not understand where these policies are coming from, they do not understand the role that the president himself is playing, and they have not really stopped to look at the situation. I think a lot of people actually think that the whole alt-right movement came out of nowhere last year, and if you think that, you are a fool, because it has been very obvious moving forward for, again, 2 generations. And the fact that they're in a prominent position is not the result of a fluke. It's not the result of some sudden change in how things are moving. It's a result of steady progress they have been making due to very sensible policies they have been following in terms of their own political advancement. Had we followed similar policies, we would be in a very different place as a community. But instead, we fought over who can call themselves Wiccan, what different definitions of magic are, and anything that might divide us, when we should have been kind of standing together and working for the things that matter to us, but we chose not to as a community. Some of the traditions have done some very positive and very practical things, but as a community, we've basically wasted our efforts and scattered our energies to the winds. And here we stand now, almost too late to do anything, possibly too late to do anything in terms of changing what's happening. And our biggest question now is, how do we deal with it? But binding the man isn't going to make any difference because he's not the problem. The problem is a much larger political movement with a lot of other people in it who actually have more to do with it than he does. So those are my thoughts, and that's why I'm not involved in it. And again, those are my personal thoughts, not my thoughts as Chancellor of the Karelian Tradition. As Chancellor of the Karelian Tradition, I say support who you want. But do vote for the issues that matter to you. So those are my thoughts on the subject. I hope you find them helpful. And until next time, may you blessed be. Reverend Don, super omnibus of incantations and invocations for all occasions. Marianne Kay and I created this massive compendium of magic and artwork for you to use in any way that you would like. There are literally hundreds of spells and hundreds of illustrations, which can be mixed and matched and used in many different ways. Check it out now at witchghoulstore.com.